Emmanuel Macron has promised to restore France's global standing, as he was officially inaugurated as the country's youngest president at the age of 39. "My mandate will give the French back the confidence to believe in themselves," President Macron said at the elaborate Élysée Palace ceremony. He vowed to see the EU reformed and relaunched during his time in office. He takes over from Francois Hollande, whose 5-year term was plagued by high unemployment figures. Mr. Macron was proclaimed France's new president a week after his resounding victory over the National Front's Marine Le Pen, with 66% of the vote in the runoff poll. The former investment banker, who had never contested an election before and only formed his centrist political movement a year ago, has vowed to shake up the country's political order and reinvigorate its economy. Tight security was in place across Paris for the ceremony at the president's official residence, with hundreds of extra police on patrol. France has been under a state of emergency since terror attacks in 2015, and a large section of the city center was closed to traffic all morning. During his inaugural address on Sunday, President Macron pledged to restore the confidence of the French people in their country's future. "The division and fractures in our society must be overcome," said the 39-year-old centrist. "The world and Europe need more than ever France, and a strong France, which speaks out loudly for freedom and solidarity," he declared. He said he would convince the people that the power of France is not declining, that we are on the brink of a great renaissance. He was presented with a necklace once worn by Napoleon I, as a symbol of his position as Grand Master of the Legion of Honor, a title usually given to the leader of France. Before the ceremony began, he spent nearly an hour with his predecessor, who handed him the country's nuclear codes. It was Mr. Hollande who launched the new president's political career, appointing him first as advisor and later economy minister. Despite historic low approval ratings, the former president tweeted after leaving the palace, "I leave a country in a much better state than I found it." Emmanuel Macron's task is to bring about the renewal he's promised for France, to shake up its old political order, reinvigorate its anemic economy and bring down unemployment rates, hovering at around 10%. To achieve all that, Mr. Macron needs his brand new political party, La Républicaine Marche, to secure a large number of seats in next month's parliamentary elections. Otherwise he will find it hard to push through his planned reforms. If he fails, he knows he could wind up like his predecessor, the socialist Francois Hollande, who promised to bring change but ended up being viewed as weak and indecisive, and who leaves office as France's least popular president of modern times. At 39, Mr. Macron will become France's youngest leader since Napoleon and the first to be born after 1958, when France's Fifth Republic was put in place by President Charles de Gaulle. His En Marche political movement was formed just last year, and as a new party, La Républicaine Marche, will be fielding candidates for almost all of France's 577 seats in June's parliamentary elections. He has promised to work for everyone and sees his program as straddling both left and right. Mr. Macron's first week in office will be busy. He heads for Berlin on Monday to meet Chancellor Angela Merkel and to demonstrate his commitment to the European Union. He is also expected to name a prime minister on Monday morning. Mr. Macron faces major challenges including high unemployment, especially among France's young, and low economic growth. He says his main aims are to boost investment and to set up a new growth model that increases social mobility and helps the environment. Later on Sunday, Mr. Macron visited the Arc de Triomphe and laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Emmanuel Macron took power as President of France on Sunday in a solemn ceremony heavy with tradition at the Élysée Palace, and he pledged to work to heal divisions in society, a nod to the bitter campaign he fought to defeat a far-right leader. His inauguration marked a first for the world's fifth-largest economy and founding member of the European Union, installing a 39-year-old centrist newcomer unknown to the wider public 3 years ago and who stands outside any traditional political grouping. The former investment banker becomes the youngest post-war French leader and the first to be born after 1958, when President Charles de Gaulle put in place the country's Fifth Republic. In his first word in office, he addressed himself to the fraught and fiercely contested election campaign in which he overcame the National Front's Marine Le Pen, but which was a disappointment for almost half of France's 47 million voters. Many people feel dispossessed by globalization as manufacturing jobs move abroad and as immigration and a fast-changing world blur their sense of a French identity. The division and fractures in our society must be overcome. I know that the French expect much from me. Nothing will make me stop defending the higher interests of France and for working to reconcile the French, Macron declared. A convinced European integrationist unlike Le Pen and other candidates, Macron went on, the world and Europe need more than ever France, and a strong France, which speaks out loudly for freedom and solidarity. Macron took power formally after an hour-long private meeting with outgoing President François Hollande, in which official access to France's nuclear missile launch codes was handed over. Macron then accompanied his political patron, for whom he once worked as economy minister, down the red carpet to a waiting car in which the socialist leader departed to applause from VIP guests and his former household staff. In a ceremony conducted with all the pomp and glitter of high state occasions in France, Macron was presented with what is effectively his chain of office, a heavy golden necklace mounted on a red cushion that makes him Grand Master of the National Order of the Légion d'Honneur, an honors system for servants of the Republic. But he also appeared determined to create an impression of personal modesty at the start of his rule. Aides went out of their way to emphasize that the dark suit he wore to stride up the red carpet to power cost about €450 or just under $500. The Vuitton in lavender blue costume worn by his wife Brigitte, who was at his side, was on loan from the fashion house, journalists were told. But he also displayed youthful vigor during the televised proceedings, at one point racing up the stairs to meet a protocol requirement, something not all previous French presidents might have managed. The arrival in power of Macron, which was marked by a 21-gun salute at the Esplanade des Invalides behind the Eiffel Tower, signaled at least a pause in the anti-globalization trend that brought Donald Trump the U.S. presidency and led British voters to pick a future outside the European Union. Departing from past tradition, he chose to be driven by military jeep rather than civilian limousine up to the Arc de Triomphe in driving rain to light the flame in tribute to France's war dead at the Tomb to the Unknown Soldier, a potent reminder of France's role in the NATO defense alliance. Macron also showed determination in the fight against terrorism, since the Arc is not far from where a policeman was shot dead by a gunman acting for Islamic State shortly before the May 7 second round of the election. In coming parliamentary elections in June, he must try to win a majority for his startup Republic on the Move, a REM party that has blown apart traditional French political boundaries. Macron, once an aide to Hollande and who rose to prominence as his economy minister between 2014 and 2016, might therefore struggle to get the country behind him. In the first round of voting, more than 45% chose either Le Pen or other candidates who promised the opposite of Macron's medicine, that they would close the wealth gap by rolling back globalization, closing borders and unraveling the institutions of the European Union. The business-friendly labor reforms in Macron's program will push on with an effort Hollande started and which killed his chances of a second term by failing to ease unemployment. They helped make Hollande the least popular French president in modern history. But the timing of France's youthful new leader is good. The economy, in the doldrums for years, is beginning to show signs of recovery. Union power has waned in the Hollande years, even though workers' rights are still held dear. And until a financial scandal ruined his campaign at the start of this year, Macron's mainstream conservative rival François Fillon had won wide electoral support for a far more aggressive set of pro-business measures. Macron has already forged close ties with EU anchor nation Germany, and will head for Berlin on Monday to meet Chancellor Angela Merkel and ram home the message that the bloc is resilient despite Britain's Brexit vote. More than 230 people have died in attacks claimed by Islamic State in France over the past 2 years as the country has taken part in military action against the militant group that controls parts of Syria and Iraq. 1,500 police were mobilized to ensure security for Macron's inauguration while a large section of Paris was closed to traffic all morning.